And think of the difference between a practice that misses 42% of their calls and then converts 20% compared to a practice that answers 100% of your calls and converts 70%. That statistic alone is absolutely life/business changing for any private medical practice. Welcome to another episode of the Physician Growth Accelerator, a show where we break down your private medical practice systems into vitals, give you the tools to diagnose root cause of what may be restricting your growth, and prescribe what to do about it. I'm your host, Ed Williamson, and I believe that every system is perfectly designed to get the result it gets. And the freedom that exists in that is because once we understand that everything is this perfect outcome, all we need to do is tweak the system if we want something different. I want to thank a lot of people who have been sending in notes, giving us suggestions on topics they want to hear about, thanking us to cover some of the things that we're talking about. One of my favorite pieces of feedback is, Zed, it sounds like you're in my head. I just absolutely love that. And I'm guessing, I'm just going to go ahead and assume, if you're listening to this podcast, you're dealing with some kind of constraint in your medical practice. It's obstacles that are in the way of you achieving your goals. And that can look or feel like burnout. Maybe it's your business is hitting a plateau. Maybe there's employee drama you don't really know what to do with, and a lot of other things. But you've gotten to a point and you've decided, you know what, I want to make a change. If that's you, go to physiciangrowthaccelerator.com and check your vitals using our free diagnostic. And speaking of that diagnostic, what we've done based on our history of working with private medical practices is we have identified 9 specific points of constraint or obstacles that keep a practice from hitting their goals. And they fall into 3 categories. And what I'm going to talk about a single constraint, a single vital in what we measure. So if you go and check your vitals, you might get feedback on this very specific one, depending on if it's healthy or not for you. But I want to give you an understanding or a narrative of where this exists within your practice. So in your practice, I want you to think about the time between a patient saying, I have a problem, and taking action to reach out to you, all the way through them choosing to have a treatment or not. So imagine that patient, they're aware, they go, okay, this is a problem, I'm done with it. They're either calling, maybe they're going to your website and trying to reach out to you. That's the start of this section, all the way through them saying yes or no to being treated by you. So that's what we refer to as the capture stage. And within this stage, there are 3 vitals that we measure. And the one I'm going to talk about today is called the conversion vital. Now, this word conversion, sometimes it is a word that is used commonly in a practice. Sometimes it's never used at all. All it is the percent of people that say, hey, I need help, and how many of them actually show up, end up being an appointment in your practice. This is one of the most important parts of your system. This is by far the place where practices lose the most. And because most practices aren't set up to measure data, they have no idea. So it's this really dangerous vital that's so important because you may not know it's broken. You may not know it's an obstacle, but it is having a massive, I promise you, a massive impact on the profitability, the flow, everything about your medical practice. So the conversion vital. And if you were to go take the diagnostic and come back with information saying you need help there, what it's going to do is it's going to walk you through some of the things that might be going wrong. So let's say one of them is phone calls. So a patient tries to call your office, and I say try because a lot of times it is a try, and they have a hard time getting through. That's in this vital. Imagine a patient, they've probably been putting this off for a long time. They finally go, okay, today's the day, I'm calling. They pick up the phone, they call. Maybe it rings, maybe it doesn't. I'll explain why. Maybe they get an option to pick from 19 different selections to choose where they go, and then it ends up in a voicemail, or it ends up in no voicemail, or just no one ever answers at all. The statistic is 42%. 42% of all calls to private medical practices go unanswered. That's a challenge. That's an instant place where you just lose so much opportunity. And here's a couple of reasons why. First of all, it tends not to be measured, meaning you probably don't know how many calls are coming into your office. However, it's a very easy thing to measure. And if you were measuring it, you might find out that whatever system you're paying for actually is not the right one for your business. This is a specific story that we've come across many times across multiple practices where their voice over IP or VoIP system wasn't set up for the call volume. And so at certain points, when enough patients were calling, other patients that were trying to call would just get dead air because there was no line for them to come through. They didn't go to voicemail. It didn't ring anywhere. The office had no idea these calls were coming in because there was no way to track them because they just didn't exist. They went into no man's land. And imagine that patient, what are they thinking? Is this office open? Maybe they closed. Maybe this isn't the right place. And they move on. So really important, vital. The other aspect of this is what if they do actually connect with somebody? Is the call leading to an appointment? There's a pretty scary number here. On average, when we measure practices across everything, we see about a 20% conversion rate, meaning 20% of the people who call end up having an appointment. Now, our belief is that it should be closer to 60 to 70%. Why? Why would that be? These patients are reaching out. They have gone through enough struggle where they've gotten to the point where I'm sick of this. I want this fixed. I'm going to go search for help. And only 20% convert. I mean, think about that. So the reason it's that low is because the process for taking that call, the actual words that are spoken to that patient, they're not the right words. Calls are answered, how may I help you? And they answer questions like, do you take insurance? Yeah. Where are you? On 3rd Street. And it's just a bad experience. And so what that patient does is they go away, 8 out of 10 of them. And if you think about what you need in your practice, do you want new patients? Are there specific patients that you really wish you had more of? Imagine telling 8 out of 10 people to go away. You wouldn't ever tell your staff, right? All right, hey, let's have a good day at work today. I want Margaret, when you answer the call, if you answer 10 people, make sure you tell 8 that they can't come here. You would never do that, but in effect, we are doing that by not purposely taking control of how we communicate with these patients who are searching for help. So is someone dedicated to answering these calls? Meaning that is their job. Their job is to connect emotionally with patients. Is there a specific script that they're using to help take that patient through a process that ends up with them as an appointment because they trust you to help them? Now, the other side of this is you might get a sense that there's an issue here if you ever have to call your practice and you don't like doing that. If you don't like calling your own practice, imagine what patients think. And so that can be because no one ever answers, or you hear a little attitude in the voice. That's a culture issue. So how does culture affect business? Well, everywhere. And you have a culture, and it might be one that allows people to be on the phone in a way that doesn't help patients feel super good about coming to you. So you can see how important this one vital is, this one of 9 that we look for obstacles, because it's this gateway to opportunity. Now, let's put the phone aside and let's just talk about your website. Let's pretend your website is awesome. And when people are searching for a solution, they come across your website, it conveys trust. They go, man, I want to go here, but I'm at the office and I don't really have time to call. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to submit an appointment request form, or however you have it up on your practice. How quickly are those people being contacted? There have been practices that we have worked with, and they wouldn't call those patients back for maybe a week. And then what it would be one phone call. And maybe they left a message, and maybe they wouldn't. So think about that patient. They're struggling. They're searching online. They're saying, I need help. Oh, I found somebody. Great. I'm going to reach out to them. I'm going to talk to them about all the things I'm struggling with. And they send it out into this abyss. They don't have very high expectations, unfortunately, because of how many businesses just ignore these forms. But they have hope. And they're thinking, man, I really hope someone calls me back. It goes to your office. the staff is overwhelmed. It's not a priority. It's not talked about. It's not a culture of execution that gets them to take action on this. And when they do, it's kind of this interruption, like, oh, geez, I got to call Margaret. So they call Margaret. They go, hey, Margaret, this is blah, blah, blah office. Give us a call. And that's it. And they go, okay, fine. Thank God that's out of the way. I don't have to worry about it anymore. Imagine the difference with a practice that form comes in and they're called within 30 minutes. And if they're not answered, there's a voicemail, and then they're called again the next day. And if they are not answered, they call again the next day. And they keep calling until the patient says, hey, I'm cool. I don't need you to reach out to me, or they book an appointment. Why would we do that? Well, because we care about the patient. They called with a concern. They called hoping for a fix. Why would we just call them one time? Do we not care about treating them? Of course we do, but we don't act like it in the business side of the practice. So this is one of those parts of the vitals that is so important. And the challenge is you can't improve what you don't measure. So at a minimum, look into your phone system. Can you measure phone calls? How can you measure them? Do you get the average length of the call? Can you see what times a day they come in? Can you see how many were missed? Does it look like it hits a single number and it never gets higher than that? That might be a sign you don't have enough lines. Do you have 18 choices at the beginning where you're making the patient choose, 74 for new patient appointments? Reduce that. Think about this as the gateway to your practice and how you can make it as easy as possible. So that patient goes, man, you know what? I trust these people. I've got a problem and I think they can solve it, so I'm going to go see them. And think of the difference between a practice that misses 42% of their calls and then converts 20% compared to a practice that answers 100% of your calls and converts 70%. That statistic alone is absolutely life/business changing for any private medical practice. So I hope you found some value. I hope you take this and go dig into some of the data because, like I said, you can't improve what you don't measure. And I want you to think about, what is the dream for your practice? What is that long term? 3 years from now, you want to be achieving fill in the blank. What's really important to you? Is it possible that the conversion vital is an obstacle to that? Well, the Physician Growth Accelerator knows where to look and how to remove the constraint to what's hindering your growth. So go to physiciangrowthaccelerator.com and request a business assessment review. Thank you, and we'll see you again on the Physician Growth Accelerator.